I feel like it was a privilege for me to have to go through cancer, like, because it made me reassess what matters, what doesn't matter, what's important, what's not important. And really, I stopped looking at people like, like my religion there for a long time was my politics, which I think is the biggest perversion of anything, which that's a whole nother podcast we can go off on. But um, it made me see people as the way God sees them, as they were made in his image.
You are now tuning in to the Relentless Project. Real people, real stories, real life.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Relentless Project. I'm your host, Ish, and I'm here with Tyler Ross, who founder of Fighter's Passport. Got a hell of a story. When you did that guest intake form, I'm like, oh man. And this is why I love doing this stuff, because your story, your testament is awesome. And I say awesome because it can inspire a lot of people. Like, even just reading through this and trying to figure out, like, how do I want this conversation to go? I'm like, it can go 1,000 ways because there's so much to pull from. So first and foremost, like, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Where do you come from? And what are you passionate about? That's what the whole premise of this is. What's your passion?
Yeah, man. So my name is Tyler Ross. I am from Western North Carolina, a little town called Lester, just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. We're up in the mountains. My background is, after I graduated college, it was focused on natural resource conservation and management. I do a lot of hunting, a lot of fishing, a lot of stuff outdoors. Right now, I actually have a part-time job that I've taken on with the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services Division of Soil and Water to help do watershed impairment, stream bank stabilization, and potentially restoration work inside of the damaged watersheds from Hurricane Helene. But I also up to Hurricane Helene, I was full-time in Fighter's Passport in a creative company that I'd started. But, with all that stuff, it makes it a slow burn. So right now, here I am just doing that part-time gig and focusing on Fighter's Passport as much as humanly possible. I guess my passions in life are, man, I got a few ish, and it's going to make me sound either really cool or really weird. So
hey, I'm all about both.
We'll just hop in, man. I think the biggest passion I have in my life now that's really come about in the past probably 12, 15 years is helping people find and follow Jesus. That's a big thing to me. And then after that would be helping people find, and it kind of relates with this as well, is helping people find good community of good people. So with jiu-jitsu, I think we all know that it's probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest communities that exists nationwide, even worldwide. Yeah, and just helping people connect with each other is like what I really like.
I would have to agree with that. I just had John Thomas on, founder of Tap Cancer Out, and to be able to leverage that jiu-jitsu community for such a good cause. I think jiu-jitsu is such a close-knit community, especially here in Pittsburgh. I don't know if you've been to Pittsburgh and you're familiar with the MMA community here and jiu-jitsu community. There's so many gyms popping up now, right? So many academies. And on the weekends, you'll find everyone at one academy. So like on Fridays, they'll be at, the Mat Factory or Stout. And then Saturday, they'll be at this other one. But like everyone from each academy goes to these academies, and they're always cross-training, and then come competition day or fight day, it's game on. Everyone's about their school. Yeah. And then once the match is over, everyone's back to cross-training and training with each other. And I think that's the beauty of the sport. It's like you can put your differences, your linkage, your affiliations, like all that aside, and come together for a good cause, training, pushing each other, bettering each other, and then,
Absolutely.
we have one of our guys Lucas Siebert going to go compete in Worlds in Vegas. Actually, he's doing that today as we speak. And you have owners of other academies and people from different academies like wishing him good luck because he's representing Pittsburgh. He's representing this community, you know. And same thing with other schools who send people. Everyone's wishing each other good luck because at the end of the day, we're all here for a short time, for a good time, not a long time, as they say.
That's right.
What got you into the conservation stuff? I mean, I think that's interesting because of your faith, right? Like, which I don't know if you've linked all that, but
yeah,
how do you get into that and why? You're the first person I've had on here who's kind of pursued that.
So, so I guess you remember the early 90s when NAFTA was happening, the North American Free Trade Agreement. My dad had a job. He was a machinist at a place here in Asheville. And overnight, man, we went from, we were never upper middle class, but we were a middle class family. Daddy was a supervisor at a machine shop, and that job left. And overnight, we went out. So at that same time, they were doing dairy buyouts and tobacco buyouts because of, or not necessarily dairy buyouts. They were changing the regulation to 0200 operations. And in our community, it was very rural. And at one time, we had 35 dairies where I live, and we had tobacco farms everywhere. And if you were ever needed to work and make money to support your family, you would literally walk down the street or you drive down the road, and a dairy farmer would have you help them, or a tobacco farmer. And sometimes they did both. You'd put up tobacco or you'd help on the farm some way, shape, or form. And I remember I was 11 years old, and I watched my dad. I went with my dad to go pick up his tools from the machine shop, and that was a weird experience at 11. And then a year later, I was 12, maybe 13, and Daddy was helping. I want to say it was his younger brother, and I was out there with him, and we were doing some work on a barn, like the roof of a barn. And I just remember a dude that worked with it was either the EPA. And since then, like, I'm just going to say it, I've worked with the EPA in multiple things, and they're fantastic people. But at this time, the person that was the EPA, or he was with Division of Water Resources or something, he made the comment, "These backward hillbillies." And I just remember that really stuck with me. And every farmer I knew and still know, they care for the landscape more than anybody. In our country, we black the eye of the farmer. And like in Europe, they don't do that. If you look at England right now, man, they're protesting because they're making it difficult for the inheritance tax, to where that land's going to change to development. And we've seen what rapid development does. And, you got to have farms to feed people. So at an early age, it helped me. And like, that was always in the back of my mind. But I grew up reading like the Young American books, like about George Washington, Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone. Where we live at, we're not far from the eastern band of the Cherokee Indian. It's just over the hill from me. Growing up, we have distant relation, but it was always just, I would imagine wanting to be back in that time and living off the land. And like, I loved it. I loved being outside. I loved everything about it. And when I got in college, I went to college late because that was probably the best bet. I went and started working straight out of high school. I started welding, and my maturity still, it's not there yet. I'm almost 40.
Dude, I'm with you. Like, I'll grow up when I die.
That's exactly right. So I went to college later. So I was like 21. It was actually when the recession hit. I was very fortunate that I was in college, and like at that time, because I had a lot of buddies that they still haven't recovered from it, if we're going to be honest. But while I was in there, I did like an aptitude test, and they're like, "So what do you like doing?" I was like, "Man, I try to figure out how to get out of my classes early so I can go squirrel hunting, or I can go turkey hunting, or I can go be in the woods, or I can go chase it, run a line for a trout." And they're like, "Have you ever thought about natural resources?" So I just went in, and it was very science based. And I'm just an old flunky from the mountains of North Carolina, so I'm not intelligent by any stretch of the imagination. But it just spoke to me.
What
and I
is
just
intelligence, though?
I don't know, man.
You can live off the land. You know how many Americans can't? If supermarkets closed today, how many people would go hungry because they have no idea on how to farm your ground and
Oh yeah.
plant a seed and cultivate that seed. That blows my
Yep.
mind. And I think we're at a time where I think more and more people are becoming aware and conscious of that.
Yeah.
So you see more and more people, like I also do real estate. I have a
Okay.
few clients now leaving the city because they want land so that they can put, chickens, so they can not grow eggs, but so they can, harvest their eggs from the chickens, and they can have a garden so they can, like, I'm seeing that a lot more now, and it's very interesting. It's
Oh
very
yeah.
interesting. And it's cool.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up with my grandfather. He grew up in the project. No, he didn't grow up in the projects, but when I grew up, he was living in the projects here in the States. He came from Puerto Rico, and he had a garden that won awards
That's
in the
awesome.
projects. That was
That's so
his
cool.
baby. Like, that was his thing. So I grew up kind of around, gardening and stuff like that. And he had a cilantro garden. I remember one was cilantro. That was his baby. I don't know why. Like, Puerto Ricans love cilantro. And I would go to
I,
help him, and he would kick me out. Like, no, get out of here. Like, this is my thing. And he was like crippled, like used a cane for as long as I can remember. And you could not help him. That was his thing. He had to tend his garden. So I
yeah.
grew up in the inner city, but I'm familiar with, I don't want to say farming, but gardening, because
Yeah.
it
No.
was small, very small.
That's
So it's cool.
gardening's just small scale farming, man. Like homesteading is just smaller scale of, a large farming operation. And I will say there's a lot of people that talk a lot of smack about cilantro. They're uncultured swine. All right. I love
Thank you.
cilantro.
Dude, I knew I'd like you. I knew I'd
Yeah.
like you. Dude,
It's phenomenal.
every time someone mentions cilantro, I don't know why, I'm like, oh, my grandfather had a cilantro garden. He used to grow. Every single time you can mention it 50 times, I will say it 50 times, because
Phenomenal.
dude, I'm so proud of that. Like,
Yeah.
we grew up in the projects, and the fact that he still had his garden of tomatoes and cilantro, and, like, dude, he was a dude who would, like, I can say this now because he can't get in trouble because he's dead. R.I.P. my grandfather. He would, like, snap the chickens' necks right
Yeah.
there. They'd run around it, and then he'd, defeather them, like, in the projects. And I would tell him, like, you can't do that here. People are gonna, like, he's, well, I'm this food. Like,
Yeah.
I understand, and, like, that's a normal thing to do for people who make their own food like that, but you're going to get called. People are going to call the police on you, and they think you're cruelty to animals because they don't understand that this is the process that happens when you buy your chicken at the supermarket. Someone has to kill this thing.
Dude, people are so far removed. For you to live in a house, for you to eat something, for anything to happen, something had to die for your convenience.
And it's so
And
funny when
that's,
I see comments
yeah.
online, people are like, why would you do this when you can just go to the store and buy it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're
Yeah, I
so
get it.
far removed.
Dude, I had a lady just absolutely go nuts on me for posting a picture with my son. He killed his first turkey. And like, it was before, like, I set my profile to private because I just don't care to hear people, if I don't know
But
you,
why?
why am
Why
I,
subject yourself to?
Yeah. And she was just like, that is so cruel. If you have to eat turkeys, why don't you go pick it up at the store? I'm like, you mean the store where they were fed antibiotics and steroids to grow to a certain size within 9 weeks and then slaughtered? No.
Mass killed?
I'm going to go kill the one that was out there, living as a wild bird that has no extra stuff in it, that is very lean, very healthy, and then teach my son the responsibility of, you have to protect the resources so that these things can thrive, so that we can eat them and we can survive. And this will lessen your chance of all sorts of extra crazy things happening on down the road, like with your health.
And yeah, and it's
yeah,
it's an interesting conversation, right? Because,
man,
especially, I'm a God-fearing man myself, and we get presented this question of, like, God created these animals.
yeah,
And it's like, yeah, God created these animals for us to harvest, to feed from.
yep,
Like, everything. And I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and they were talking about the podcast, and they're like, oh, you'll really talk to anyone about anything? And I'm like, absolutely, because I think it's very important to to have the conversations that people are scared to have. You know, now if you say something someone disagrees with, you are slaughtered. And I think that's so immature. Like, we can have a conversation, and if you disagree, you disagree. If you don't like the episode, don't listen to it, don't watch it.
Yeah.
If it resonates with you, awesome. If it's something that causes you to like, oh, I'd like to have a conversation about that, or I'd like to dispute that, or feel free. I'm not, and I'm not Noah, but that being said, I'm a faith driven man. I'm a God-fearing man. And I believe that, you know, certain animals were put on this earth, crops and all that was put on this earth for humans to, one, tend to, and then pull resources from.
Yeah.
Right. So like, we get asked that question of, how can you kill a deer? How can you kill a turkey? And it's like, to feed my family. And in that, there's so many lessons learned. You're teaching your son how to be responsible in caring for this land, how to be responsible. Like, you're not just taking a life. He's understanding that by taking this turkey's life, that's a huge thing. And I need to respect that and know that this is going to feeding my family, providing for my family.
Yep.
Now, if he's out there blasting turkeys and just letting them, like, that's irresponsible.
Yep.
So you're teaching responsibility and everything, and all this we're doing, and there's a lot of respect that comes with that.
Oh yeah.
So it's cool. It's cool that you're already teaching him. How old is your son, if you don't mind me asking?
So the oldest will be 12 in January, and the youngest is 8.
Oh, and they're already doing things that most adults have no clue.
Yeah, they're out there. They're good at it. They like it, and it's, you know, they're both feral youngins, which is what you want, you know. And
there's hope for our future yet. There's hope for our future yet.
That's right. It's funny you said that about, like, because people that are believers have made comments to me about, like, well, you know, you're not supposed to kill, and I'm like, Acts 10:13, baby, rise, Peter, kill and eat. You know, that's what he told them.
Kill? What is kill?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have the proper terminology, but, and, you know,
it's not murder.
Exactly. So kill in the Bible is derived from certain verbiage, and it's essentially murder. You should not murder. Now, what is murder? That's killing without, like, essentially, I'm going to get slaughtered for this, but because it's escaping me. You, like, killing without like killing in a wrong way. For example, just going down the street and murdering someone. It's not. It doesn't mean kill as in, like, you're killing this turkey to eat. You're killing this deer to eat. Someone breaks into your house and has your family at bay, and you defend yourself, like that. It's in that premise. And even then, we're told not to do that, because the only person who should be murdering or killing is the person who created life, being our Father. We don't get to say yes and no to all this stuff, but we get to defend ourselves and we get to feed our families. You know, and it's always a touchy subject. And I love talking with people who have more knowledge than that than me, because I do read my Bible and I try to pull things from. But, like, I'm not a Bible expert. I'm not a theologist. I'm a God-fearing man, and I'm trying to dive deeper into my journey. And I'll admit that, you know, if someone gets me and they're like, ha, gotcha. And I'm like, no, you just pushed me to dive deeper into the word. So thank you, because I don't understand everything, and I want to understand as much as possible. So you have got me now, but all you did was push me further into understanding. So I appreciate it.
Well, it mirrors jiu-jitsu, right? Like, there's people I roll with, man. They catch me and stuff all the time, and it's like, oh crap, that's going to make me try and learn to be better at this. And how do I defend that? And how do I see that coming? You know, it's.
How did you get started in jiu-jitsu?
So, I have to tell you about. It started in 6th grade. I went to try out for our basketball team, and I'm not what they call a tall man, Mr. Lopez. I'm average, you know, 5'8". But in 6th grade,
you're taller than me. I'm 5'7". The worst insult I can get, right? Because I work out. I love training.
Yeah, I was about to say, your arms look about 5'8".
So people look at me and they see me in person and they look at me and they're like, "Oh, thought you were taller." I'm like, "Oh."
Step out on the mat. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey, I thought you were stronger." That's what I'm just going to tell people. I thought you were stronger than that.
Oh, man. Your biceps look bigger online.
I get vertically challenged, horizontally gifted. That's the way I look at it. Yeah. I can't force my growth, but I can force my growth. So that's what I'm going to stick with. Things I can control.
That's
I'm
awesome.
5'7", and I'm proud. Short king, as they call it. So you're a short king, my guy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So in 6th grade, I went out to try for the basketball team, and like they didn't even let me on the court. And there was a coach there or somebody that was helping, and he pretty much said to me, he's like, "Son, you don't stand it." Pretty much just told me that it would be best for me to go somewhere else. I didn't even get to shoot. I didn't get to do anything. And I walked outside and I was, pretty upset. And my Sunday school teacher was standing there, and Mark's his name. And he was like, "What's going on?" And I told him what was happening. He said, "Well, come with me. I'm coaching wrestling this year. And we've only got like 5 kids." So I followed him into our auditorium. They had the mat set up on the stage there. And I remember like the first day after practice, my dad came to pick me up. He said, "How basketball tryouts go?" I was like, "I don't know. We got to sell my shoes and we got to go get wrestling shoes because I'm wrestling now." And I had 2 cousins that they wrestled, and they were phenomenal. But again, and so I wrestled all the way through 11th grade. I didn't my senior year because I played soccer as well, and I thought I had a chance to go play college, but looking back, I wish I just kept wrestling. But I really just enjoyed, being on the mat, and like it was like usually I get in trouble for fighting at school, but this was a place where it was encouraged, within the rules, right, of Greco-Roman and freestyle. But it was just, man, it was really just awesome. And I just remember that it made me like look at people differently, not in a stance of like looking down on them, but like, I was better to people after I started wrestling. I started being
newfound
kinder.
level of respect.
Absolutely. And the only thing I did that was kind of borderline was my junior year. I got in trouble. I had to take a T-shirt off that said "Wrestling is what men do during boys basketball season," and got in a lot of trouble for
That's
that.
just because you didn't get to the team. That's all.
Yeah,
I'm all about a little level of pettiness.
Yeah,
I'm not above
whatever.
it. I'm not above it.
And I told the guy, I was like, "Well, if it bothers anybody, like, there's a mat room over here. You pin me, I'll take the shirt off." And the principal was like, "Are you challenged?" I was like, "No, not you, my peers." Like, but I was also very mouthy ish, and I still kind of struggle with that, but I'm working on it, but so yeah. So what happened?
I'm the same way, bro. I'm the same way. Sometimes I just can't help it.
It's just got to come out,
I'm working on it as well. We're always a work in progress. That's what I tell people. Exactly right. I'm a project. I'm always working on myself.
That's right. Sanctification doesn't happen on this side. It's just the journey to it, and
amen to that.
Yeah.
So you were wrestling at a young age, and you liked it. That's cool. I wish I started wrestling, man. People look at me, my size, and the first thing I get is like, "Oh man, like, where'd you wrestle?" I didn't. I do jiu-jitsu now, but I didn't start doing that until 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, I wish I would have wrestled. You see these guys and girls who wrestled and then now do jiu-jitsu, and they're just animals, dogs, savages.
Dude, there's like me. There's so many kids.
Oh. Dude, kid wrestling. I share on my story all the time. These kid wrestlers. Did you see the video of the little kid online? And like he's looking at his parents, and he's just walking into the center of the mat, like,
and he does this.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm like, dude, he's like 4 years old or 5. Yes. He's like super young, and I'm like, he's already got he's already got
pushing the imaginary wheelbarrow. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, where? But I love that.
Dude.
I love that. Or the little girls who just sweep these kids, and I'm like, yes. And I tried to get my daughter into jiu-jitsu, and she did it for a couple years, and then woke up one day and broke my heart. I don't want to do jiu-jitsu anymore. I'm like, she's like, I want to cheer. That's fine. You can do both. Yeah. You can do both. She's like, no, I want to focus on cheering and volleyball. I'm like, you can do all 3. I don't want to burn you out, but please don't do this to me. I was like so sad. Yeah. She was like so good. She was like making little boys cry, and I love it. not doing anything wrong, but like,
Yeah.
us as men and boys, when we even, it doesn't matter if it's a girl or not, but when you lose in wrestling, you see these videos all the time. Little kids lose in wrestling or jiu-jitsu tournament, and they're just upset because like that they want to win. Everyone wants to win,
Mm-hmm.
especially in these sports that are so. I love violence.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's
So
the
I was
golden
seeing that.
standard.
Yeah, like honestly, things are like, look at history. Things
Yeah.
were settled with violence, unfortunately, but that's the way it is. Like if you tell you think of when someone challenges you and they outsmart you, or they make more money than you, or they look better than you, or what's the first thing people go to? It's like, well, you can't beat me in a fight, or let's fight. Like that's I feel like that's what people like we resort to, because like at the end of the day, you can have the most money, you can have, but like people were like, well, see me in a, like even what you said with the basketball thing. Oh,
Yeah.
let's see me on the mat.
Yeah.
It's like that's what we resort to.
Let's just chat. Let's just
It's the
chat. We
best.
can
It's
all
the
be
best
friends.
currency.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll be friends.
Yes, exactly right. Well, and
It's
it's
the best
also, if you look
currency.
at back to the point of history, you start looking at people that were peaceful leaders when they talk about like so and so is very peaceful. I'm like, I go back to what Jordan Peterson said about, well, were they peaceful? Were they capable of violence? If they weren't, then they were just taking up oxygen. Like, there's certain people that like, Achilles or Alexander the Great or, Genghis Khan, even like to an extent, they were peaceful because they were capable of great, great violence.
And
So
chose to restrain it.
and yeah,
Yeah.
because,
Are you
yeah,
nice, or are you just
yeah,
incapable?
exactly.
Right? Because
Yeah,
I would trust the person who is capable of extreme violence and chooses not to.
yep.
Like, okay, that says a lot about who you are. Than someone who just doesn't choose violence because they just can't.
What was it
And
Sun Tzu
usually,
said? He said you'd rather be a warrior in the gardener than a gardener in the war.
facts for sure.
Yeah,
I'd rather have this under leash and let it out if needed than just be completely helpless.
yeah,
It's the same thing with the argument with firearms with people. It's like you'd rather have one and not need it
yeah,
than need it and not have one.
yeah,
You know, I'd rather have this set of skills and never use it in my life, never have to use it, than be clueless and need to use it to defend myself, my family, my children, or
yeah,
someone who's incapable of defending themselves, being,
yeah,
i.e., children, someone who
yep,
doesn't train or something, or caught in a bad moment. Like, I'd rather be that person who's like, okay, turn it on, than just be like, what do I do? Call for someone who's capable of violence. So what got you? So you started wrestling. I think we lost him.
yep. So,
Are
no,
you
I'm
there?
still
Oh,
here. Hang
there we
on.
are.
Yeah.
We're back.
It's switching between my internet right now, which is so weird. Let's see what happens. I think we're good. Sorry. So so I started wrestling, and it after I got out of high school, I started working. Like I just found that there wasn't a lot that I would do to keep me active. Um, there at that time there wasn't anything in the Asheville area. Um, there was a gym down the road from me, but it was an hour and some change. And then when I went to college, when I eventually started at Western, somebody opened up a gym and I came and checked it out. And the guy who owned it wasn't there. And he had this dude that was on a power trip as you know, and I went to go do the intro class and that guy made life miserable. And I was just like, what the heck? And then I was like, well, you're driving. Cause at that point I was driving from Cullowhee to Asheville. So it was about an hour and a half. And I was like, good Lord, like, why am I doing this to myself? So there was a little wrestling club at Western that I stayed with for a little bit, not much. And then I just always wanted to get back out on the mat. And then 2018, Josh Trampus started Gracie Ball Asheville just down the road from me. And my buddy Jordan started training down there. And Jordan's dad, like he had grown up like like doing judo and stuff, and like Jordan wrestled with me a little bit growing up. But Jordan was a stud on the baseball diamond, and actually was in the minors for a while, and had some shoulder stuff, and that's why I left. And he's he's a large unit. I call him my greatest protege because he's just a monster on the mats. He really is. But he called me and he said, Tyler, you've got to come to this gym. You've got to check it out. And at that time, I had my youngest son was 3, and I worked for a district, a local county here that doesn't have a huge tax base, so the pay wasn't that great. And my wife was a teacher, and teachers in North Carolina, it's not fantastic. So I was like, I just got to figure out how to pay for it. And so eventually, everything started like sorting out to where like I was like, hey, I'm going to be able to afford to do this. So I went and did an intro class in December and of 2019, and like was ready to sign on the dotted line. We had a trip we were doing where we were going on a deer hunt, and when we got back from the deer hunt, that was in January 2020. February 2020, the world shut down, and everything happened with COVID. So the gym had to shut down for a few days. The job that I had to do for the county I was in, it changed, and my hours were all weird. So like I wasn't able to make a lot of the classes. And then Memorial Day weekend, it's interesting you're wearing that shirt because I did the Murph, and I had something hurting on my right ulna for some time, like just like a little pain. And I did the Murph that weekend, and I was like, man, I just feel weird. And I told my wife, I said, hey, I'm going to call the doctor on Monday or Tuesday and see if I can get in. And oh no, you know what? Actually, no, I'm wrong. I did the Murph the following weekend. That's what it was. And that Saturday or that Sunday, I went to Brittany, my wife's aunt's house, and I grabbed a futon with my right arm like this, or no, with my left arm, and I put my right arm down in the back of a U-Haul. And I did like this, and I pulled up, and when I did that, my ulna went pah, and just snapped. Ooh. And I was like, I sat down, and I was like, because I was expecting like this should have hurt more, like this should have hurt a lot more. And I was like, man, that's weird. So I just like kind of sat down, and I looked at my wife, and she said I turned white, and then like she said my color came back, and I thought it was going to be okay. And then I was like, you know what, let's just go to urgent care, get them to set it, and we'll go on Monday. And so I went to urgent care, and the doctor pulls up this x-ray, and there's like in the bone, there was this area that looked like Swiss cheese. And he said, what's happened is you've had an hairline fracture, and your body's tried to calcify it and restore and build, fix the fracture. He said, but it's going to require surgery, so I'm sending you to a hand specialist. And I was like, okay. So at that point, I was like, all right. So all it was just a break that just rebroke. And so Monday morning, I went into they had a special time, like if you had broke your arm over the weekend, you could go into this office at a certain time. And I walked in the door, and they had me seeing like their top dog. And went in, sat down with the nurse. Nurse comes in, she gets my x-rays. They gave them to me on a disc, and I gave it to the doctor. He walks in, and he looks at the x-ray-ish, and he just stares at it, does like this, and turns around and walks out. And I was like, okay, well, maybe he's got to go get something. The nurse comes back in, and she's crying. And she goes, honey, whatever you need, we're here for you. I was like, I need you to set my arm and like put a cast on it, like I need you. That's what I need you to do, And he came back in, and he said, son, I've been doing this 40 years, and I have seen that x-ray. I can count on one hand how many times I've seen an x-ray like that. And I was like, what the heck is it? So he said, I'm referring you to a specialist, Dr. Donald Gajewski at Mission Hospital. And that's all he said. He didn't say anything else. He said, but son, he was like, I'll call you here in a little bit with more information. So I'm driving down the road, and I pull over, and I Google Dr. Gajewski, and it pops up, and it says orthopedic oncologist at Mission Hospital. And I was like, there's only one reason you see an oncologist. So a buddy of mine, his wife worked in the office and saw my orders come across, and she called her husband. She couldn't say anything. She just said, I need to know Tyler's full name. And he told her what it was. And she said, okay, and hung up the phone. And she took it to Dr. Gajewski, and she said, this is Tyler. They were going to get him to you, but they had put it out. And it wasn't because I didn't jump in front of anybody, but just the way the scheduling worked, it would have been a month before I would have seen him. So he said, I have them come in tomorrow. So I start going home, and my buddy's wife had called and set up the appointment. And then the doctor from that morning called me, and he said, Tyler, he said, I'm sorry. He was like, to do this over the phone. He was like, but what you saw was a tumor. And he said, and that tumor is malignant. He said, so we need you to go see Dr. Gajewski, because he's the only person that I know that I trust that can get the help you need and has the connections in the oncology realm. He said, I really, really am praying and hoping that I'm wrong. He was like, but it's this. And so I just said to him, I was like, I gave him a list of cancers that family members had and passed away from. He said, it's none of those. So I remember go to see Dr. Gajewski, and so Dr. Gajewski is one of the best men that's ever taken breath on this earth. He served our country in the Army, retired from the Army as a surgeon. He ran the Intrepid program in Austin, Texas, or San Antonio, in San Antonio, Texas. And he worked at Walter Reed for a while, and he's done a lot of orthopedic work for a lot of soldiers. And he will never brag on himself. So any chance I get the opportunity to brag on Dr. Donald Gajewski, I'm going to do it. He is an amazing human being. So we went into the office, and what's weird is COVID orders, you couldn't have anybody with you. Well, we called Dr. Gajewski, and he says, your wife with you? I said, yeah. He's like, tell her to come on up. I was like, well, Dr. Gajewski, here's the rules. And he said, I don't care what the rules say. Bring her up here. And we scheduled my biopsy. He sat down and he laid it out, and he said, he gave me a list of different things it could be. And one of them, like on the top end, he was like, if it's this guy, it's going to be real quick. It's not going to be a lot. It's just going to be a lot of scans or a lot of monitoring for a while. He said, however, if it's osteosarcoma, that's the worst one. We don't want it. He's like, it's going to be a very intense chemo regimen for almost a year. You're going to have surgery, and you're going to have a lot of surgeries. And you're never going to get cure or remission. You're only going to live with no evidence of disease. And I was like, okay. And he said, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of doctors in the sarcoma realm. He said, but fortunately, the leading expert of sarcomas is Dr. Paul Savage at Wake Forest down in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And you've got an appointment with him tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Or he said, but if whatever it comes, I'm getting ahead of myself. So a week later, he calls us in after the biopsy comes out. And, he sits down and he says, it came back, it's osteosarcoma. He was like, I don't know the stage. I don't know the grade. He is like, but I know that you're going to see Dr. Savage tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So we drove down, saw Dr. Savage, and he fits the name. He's a great, great human being. But for what he does and what he's an expert in, he's not really a warm and fuzzy guy. Amazing, great person, very good at what he does. He sits down and he says, you have, I'm going to he's like, this is stage 3 high-grade osteosarcoma. He said, son, he was like, I got to tell you, he was like, we need to start the chemo within 2 weeks. He said, if we start the chemo within 2 weeks, that's going to set you up the best chance to reach the 10-year mark, to where we can't give you cure, but then you go to an annual monitoring, and that's as close as we could get to cure with osteosarcoma. He said, however, if we've got to wait months, you won't be here in 3 years. So I was sitting there, and we were working with our local hospital, but we were working with Messina Cancer Center, which is a fantastic cancer center in West North Carolina. And he referred me to my doctor there, which at that time was Dr. Terawaki. And I went to go see her. That was on a Friday. We met with him. So Monday morning, we walked into her office, and she said, okay, we've got you on the list to get into Mission Hospital. But she's like, it's probably going to be about a month or two before you can start chemo. And I looked at her and said, ma'am, if you can't start it, I got to start driving back down to Wake Forest, because I don't have a month. I don't have 2 months. I've got 2-week window that started on Friday. So realistically, I need to be in there by the end of the week at the latest. If you can't do it, I need you to tell me right now, because I got to call Dr. Savage, and we're going to redo everything, and I'm going to go down the mountain. And she was like, let me go call him. This seems out of the ordinary. So she called him, and she's fantastic. She walked back into the office, and she looked at me, and she said, I will call you with the day they're going to check you in. I'm on the phone with HCA right now, which owns Mission Hospital, to get you in. So that was Monday. And then I started chemo on the 24th. And the MAP regimen it's a long regimen. It's got multiple cycles. You've got within the cycles, you have multiple different treatments. I want to say I had about 8 different chemos. I had this one thing called methotrexate, and they use it for like low dose for like lymphoma, leukemias, and then they got the high dose, which is for other things, and then they have a high dose, which is where they mix it specifically for you for osteosarcoma. And all of the chemo treatments I had to take were lethal, so I had to be under observation the whole time I was there. So I think it came out to being right at 8 cycles, and each cycle would be 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes they'd be longer than 6 weeks because some of the chemos at the end takes your body a lot longer to get rid of them, and they can't send you home. There's plenty of stories I could tell you about driving home sick after we went out or we left too early after a chemo, and that was nobody's fault. But so where wrestling really helped me in that time, like also obviously my faith was a huge thing. I had a peace that passes all understanding, but there were moments where I'd be getting the chemo, or I'd be sick, or I'd be very uncomfortable, or there'd be something like my buddies. Elk hunting's a big thing we love to do, and they went on an elk hunt, and they killed a monster, and it was a great elk. And I remember I was sitting upstairs in the lobby area. They'd only let me stay on that floor, and I walked out and I sat there, and they pulled over across the road in downtown Asheville, which is not necessarily a hunting friendly city anymore. And they're holding up an elk skull like this and like waving it out of the back of the truck so I could see the elk. But those moments where I was like really, really just down or hurting or like in a lot of pain, I just remembered those days in the mat room of, yeah, this sucks right now, but it's coming. Dawn's coming. It's going to be all right. I had to keep that mental headspace and that mental fortitude so that I could focus on what I needed to achieve making it to the other side. And man, it was something else, and it helped me too. Like I knew that I had so you don't want to lose weight when you're going through treatment. You want to gain weight, not the steroid weight. You want to gain like food weight. But man, everything in there is bland. You don't want to eat. It's hard to sleep with all the medicine. So I had some stuff happen to where I was able to take certain supplements that helped me do all that, sleep, and they didn't interfere with chemo. But one of the things like I knew that I had to do was I knew that I had to get up and I had to move. So every single day we did this thing called the Tricky Mile. And I just told people like, look, if I can get up and push this stupid thing around with my chemo and I can walk around, it was 17 laps around the 9th floor was a mile. And I would do, some days I could only make it to the door, but other days I would bust my butt to get up and do it. And then other days I would make it to like the most I walked was 3 miles around that place every day for 3 days. And then I would do a minimum of a mile, and then days I couldn't, I just get as far as I could. And I just tell people, man, if I'm able to do this, you're able to get up there and move. Just stay as active as you can. And dude, it sucked, but it was funny. One of my nurses, she was following behind me, and she said, "Young man, your calves are a nurse's dream," because the vasculars just bulging out because all I did was walk, and I was losing everything else. So like, she said we could plug you anywhere we need to, and I had a port that was right here, and they it had dual valves, so that I was going into my jugular into another one because the chemo was so intense. I had to have rescue drugs running with it. And I mean, there was just so many things and so like just stuff up there. Like, so you'll see right here, it looks like that's a shadow, but that's where they had to do the surgery. So they cut out the tumor in October of 2020, and they put a cadaver bone with titanium plates in it. So like there's a cadaver bone right here that ties into my distal and down here. And that I had to keep getting chemo while I had it. So like your body's not going to heal well while you're getting chemo. So I kept, just wanting to get back out there. And in February 21, my sons started rolling at Josh's school. And when I would be out, I would go and sit on that back wall looking like Uncle Fester, face just like, I'll shoot you a picture of what I look like during treatment, and it's going to blow your mind. But I'd sit on that back wall with a mask on and a hoodie up, and I'd just lean up against that thing, and I'd watch my sons drill jiu-jitsu. And Josh and Dakota and everybody at that gym, they would come and like just check in, take care of my boys. Just loved very, very well on me and my family during that time. And I just remember watching that, and I'm like, I'm going to get back out on that mat. I will be on that mat. And it's funny you had John on. John's a great man. I've got to meet and talk to John at Jiu-Jitsu Con this year. I made a goal. Like I got back into the hospital. So February of 21, when my son started, I watched all their stuff via FaceTime because I spent 2 days at home during that month. And then March, I spent 4 days home. And then April, I spent like just a few days home. But the April was the last hard push. And then I did, the end was May. So my birthday's May 5th. Cinco de Mayo, es mi cumpleaños. And I turned 36. And on May 6th was my last chemo treatment for osteosarcoma. And I walked out the door. But during that time in March and April, I just Googled jiu-jitsu nonprofits, cancer jiu-jitsu nonprofits, and Tap Cancer Out came up. And I started watching videos, like just little things they had done from tournaments. And then I saw that they had tournaments. And I said, I'm going to get back out on the mat and go to a tournament. And so I got out in May of 21. Because of all this, I had a cast and I had a port in. I could not get the port. There's actually a gentleman in Pittsburgh that I reached out to, his old school. He had a special thing made to protect his port while he was rolling, going through treatment. But they, unfortunately, the gentleman passed away. So I just was like, I'll just wait. So the end of November of 21, they took the port out. I had to wait 10 days before I could get out on the mat. So December of 21, 2 years after I had started jiu-jitsu, I got to go back out, and I got COVID. So I was out the rest of the end of 21, started back in January of 22, and rolled until July. And then July 4th of 22, we discovered that right here broke. And it broke while we were on the mat. And the cadaver bone and the titanium never fully healed. So that, that August or September, I had to go in and they had to do a bone graft from my iliac crest. And then they made that and they put in new cadaver bone, new titanium. So I had to wait again. And I remember after we got out of surgery, I asked Dr. Gajewski, can I go get something made to where I can roll? And I had this cast. I wish I'd have thought about it. I got it downstairs, but I could have showed it to you. It was a hard cast that came like this. It was open on the back end, but it like protected right here. And like I could only do this much. And I would wrap the crap out of my arm, put that cast on, wrap over the cast, and I would go out there and roll with one arm. And I completely skipped getting to roll in the Tap Cancer Out tournament. It was in Charlotte. It was April of 21. January of 20 or April of 22, January of 22, I looked at Josh, my professor, and I said, hey, there's a tournament coming up. I'm going to be in it. Do you think I'll be ready? He said, what do you mean by being ready? I was like, do you think I have a shot? He's like, you don't have a shot in hell, but that doesn't mean we're not going to do it. He said, you're going to go for it. And so the first match, like I forgot, like wrestling tournaments, like you got to make sure you take care of that gas tank. Yeah. Son, I had that pedal down in that first match. And I beat the guy. I think the score was like, I think I just won by points. It was like 11-2, 9-2, something like that. And then the next guy, because I was in the Masters division, but the next guy was like just turned 30, former D1 athlete. I don't know how the heck we were in the same weight group, but he absolutely, I didn't want anything to do with him. And he got a hold of like, he got it up over my head and he started twisting. And I was just like, I was so gassed, I just tapped him. And I thought that was it. I thought I had my 2 matches. And then I remember I come off the mat and one of the guys looks at me and he goes, all right, Tyler, 5 minutes. You're wrestling for bronze, or you're fighting for bronze. And I was like, oh God. So I go back out on the mat. That dude got me on this arm and it was not connected, but I didn't know that. He didn't know that. And I just remember the ref was Brazilian. And he was down in my ear and he goes, "Oh, tap, 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 please tap, friend, don't do it, friend, tap." So I tapped, and I met that guy Adrian. He's a really good guy. He lives west of me and still trains. But it was really just an awesome experience because one of the first organizations that they donated to, Alex Lemonade Stand, is very focused on sarcomas, which is essentially a childhood cancer. It was super duper rare for me to have osteosarcoma. It was super duper rare where I had it. But as things come along, we have super duper rare things apparently. Like we did not win the genetic lottery. We found out. Yeah, well, we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, it was interesting. All those things, like how it all panned out, and just the organization of Tap Cancer Out's amazing. All the stuff they do. We do the global day of grappling at our gym. Our professor now is going through the bone marrow transplant for acute myeloid leukemia. He had a reoccurrence of it, and it was really cool to see how God worked it all together. That me and Josh are able to have like this special bond, and like we can have these discussions and talk about, because it sucks. It's like John Thomas said on that thing. He's like, you folks really want to help you, but they don't understand what it's like. Like they don't think about the cost of getting to the hospital, having somebody bringing you food at the hospital, days away from home. All those different things. Like your insurance does a good bit, but man, there's so many other costs. That's a mental strain, and all these things. And like I was very fortunate to have a lot of people take that over for me. And with Josh going through right now, it's been really cool just to be able to be there and talk to him and help coordinate things. And you were talking about earlier the jiu-jitsu community in Asheville. It blows me away. When we went to Jiu-Jitsu Con, Fighter's Passport got to sponsor Marcus Buchecha to do a seminar. And Marcus is one of the kindest people I've ever met. He's just a great human being. And when I called and talked to Marcus on the phone, like about setting everything up, I said, "Hey, and when you get squared away, like I'd love to talk to you about what it would take to do a fundraiser for my professor." And I told him about Josh, and he said, "Are you in Asheville, North Carolina?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I've already got a message from the dudes that own and run Top Team in Asheville, American Top Team." He said, "I got a call with them once I get off the phone with you." I said, "Dude, that's awesome." So you had American Top Team, their gym, bringing in, even though he's training at Top Team down in Boca Raton at HQ, he got his fourth stripe as a black belt at Jiu-Jitsu Con from the dude that runs Checkmat. So he's a Checkmat black belt. American Top Team was getting him here to do a fundraiser for a Gracie Ball black belt down the road from him. It was amazing. And then Marcus did all these, it's so cool. And through Josh's first time, like all the things folks came along and did, and throughout it, it's been amazing. I've only seen it in my faith family and then in my jiu-jitsu family.
I just want to take a second to shout out a few companies who've believed in me. These were one of our first official sponsors, so huge shout out. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Carbo Jewelers, established in 1997 on the values of honesty and integrity. Whether you're searching for the perfect piece, need expert repair services, visit Carbo Jewelers in Newark's Ironbound District, where your jewelry is always in safe hands. This episode is also brought to you by Continental Jewelers, proudly serving Hudson County, New Jersey since 1964. Whether you're seeking a timeless piece or need expert repairs, they've got you covered. Visit Continental Jewelers, your trusted source for all things jewelry. You can find them on Instagram at Carbo Jewelers or online at carbojewelers.com. Lastly, big shout out to Carbo Trading. Besides coins, precious metals, and jewelry, if it could be traded and collected, he's probably got it. They can be found on Instagram at carbo.trading. You can find all of our sponsors out online on our sponsor page at therelentlessproject.com. How important is that community to you, and what can you tell people going through this? Because I have a very good friend, James Ashbacher. He got diagnosed with multiple myeloma. Healthiest dude. He ate off his own land. He was super health conscious and still fell into this, and our department, our community rallied around him, man. And we did everything we could to like offset all those additional costs and stresses. Like he had his friends and fire departments he used to work for going in and cleaning out his house, replacing air filters. Like, we did everything we could, and he still found himself in these moments where he's alone, right? Because although he has his friends, his family rallying around him, we can't thoroughly understand the fight that's ahead of him because we're not dealing with that head on. And John talked about these retreats that these nonprofits do with people with the same type of cancer who come together, and it's an opportunity for them to connect with someone going through the exact same thing they're going through. How important was this community for you to get you through your what you were going through?
Oh, dude, it was the most like it was one of the most important things. When you're going through treatment, you know, they can give you medicine that helps with a lot of physical stuff. There's a lot of things that can help with the mental. It's the mental side. You can't lose the battle upstairs, and that's what was beautiful about this community. Is there's so many times where I was in like really really bad dark places, and my phone would ring, and it would be people just calling to check in on me, just calling to talk, to listen. Or if I didn't want to talk about cancer, we talked about, you know, how the Tar Heels were doing in basketball, or what we've been seeing on cameras for deer, you know, like just stuff like that. And it was amazing. Like there was one day I remember um, I was really struggling, and my phone rang, and it was my pastor, as a community pastor. He's one of my very good friends, JJ. He called me. Then about 10 minutes later, the worship pastor called me. And then about 20 minutes later, a guy from a small group called me. And then, you know, later on that day, my pastor called me. And then like every day, my best friends, like David, Jordan, and Tyler, they always were checking on me. And my buddy Joshua, that's my business partner and a very, like, one of my best friends as well, he would call, text, take care, you know. And the power, like, I guess, like, I think it was Shia LaBeouf was on that Real Ones podcast, and he called it the ministry of presence. And it's just being there, and like there's so many people that are like, I just don't want to bother them, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to be a hindrance, or I don't want to, you know, when in truth and reality is a lot of people just don't know what to say. And like you're not going to have magical words, you're not going to have any of that thing, but if you'll just call and be a friend and listen, like that does so much more for people that are going through it. And if they don't want to talk, they won't answer the phone, you know, like shoot them a text, you know. Memes are one of the greatest gifts I think that we can have, because it's the best thing to, like, I will spend my day with Josh. We will just send memes to each other. And like that, really, it's crazy how much that gets you through it. But it's just like, it's just that being present and letting people know that they're not alone, and just re-encouraging them, like, hey, you focus on the race and the track that's laid before you. We can't run the race, but we can be right next to you, cheering you on and talking. And like some people are like, oh, that's real empty. It's not really empty when it's genuine, you know. The You yourself, as the person going through it, have to lay in there and take the treatments. You have to go through the stuff. Nobody can do that for you. However, as the supporters and the peer groups, like, you're doing all the right things, like what you guys were doing with like taking care of his house, you know, making sure they've got a meal, DoorDash, Grubhub, all those things. That's the greatest thing they can ever have. The house being clean, dishes done, laundry done, kids not having to worry about getting to and from school. Giving the kids, like, so David and Jordan and Tyler, they would pick my sons up and take them to their houses with their kids. And we had my sister, she would do that all the time. And my sons were able to like go to other places where it was safe and feel loved, and not have to go home to an empty house because dad's getting treatment, you know. And it was just people coming up and showing up and like realizing that you're not inconveniencing me, you're helping me. And I think what, you know, focusing on that, like being the people that, even though, yeah, you're not getting the treatment, coming alongside of them and loving them in every way you can, that really pulls folks through. That's what pulled me through. And I think if we had Josh, he would say the same thing. That's what's pulling him through right now.
I think that is very inspiring. It's like, to connect it back to jiu-jitsu, right? Like when you're on the mat, it's just you, right? You have your coach telling you what to do and coaching you. You have all your supporters there. You have your family there, but you're on that mat by yourself, you know. And but not to say everything leading up to that match, your training, your camp, your friends being there, your friends showing up, like that's very important and plays an integral role in what you do on that mat.
Yes, sir.
So I think it's very important to surround yourself with a good community and a good base, so that when you're having those days, you can lean on that support group. James, man, he's been nothing but an inspiration. Like he was not a social media guy. He was very private, and then he said, he's like, hey man, if I don't have much time left, I want my story to be able to inspire people, hopefully. So he started posting his treatments, him being at the hospital and doing air squats, and he was doing that walking around the hospital. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, how do I, being healthy, get to make an excuse for not training, for not rolling, for not being active, for not eating healthy, when this dude's going through all this and still making it a priority? And like he was texting our defensive tactics group, and he's like, hey, looking to get back into rolling lightly, like one of you guys come in and roll with me. And I have just gone through meniscus and a knee surgery. Ooh. Been doing rehab, haven't been doing jiu-jitsu because of it. And I was like, oh, this would be a good opportunity for me to like also get back into it, right? And I'm like dreading going in. I'm like, dude, my knee, my cardio. And like this dude's James is a savage, dude. He is built like a fucking poop brick house. He's his mental strength is out of this world. And I go roll with him, and he's like, and I'm sitting there, and before he's like, hey, just so you know, just to remind you, I have bone lesions on my skull. I got bone, stuff going on my chest, and I have a hole in my arm. So like, just be conscious of that, because if you tweak or whatever, you can break it. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, I am making excuses for not rolling, and this dude going through all this is still going to do this. Yep. And we rolled, and I'm like gassing myself. I'm killing myself. Cardio's pooped, and I'm rolling with this guy, and I'm sitting here, and he's going, and I'm telling and I'm feeling sorry for myself. And I'm like, I don't get to do that. And I think it's very important that we humble ourselves and look at people like you and James, and we see it's like, you're still doing this. I don't get to make an excuse. And I understand that we all have bad days, and there's days where we just, rest, chill, don't do anything. But if you want to do something, you don't really have an excuse, because there's people out there going through things we can't even understand and still choosing to push themselves, still choosing to be a light, when it would be very easy for you to just shell down in your house and say, I don't want to deal with people. I don't want to deal with anything. And people would understand that. Like, people can't knock you for that.
Yeah.
So I look at stories like you and James, and it puts into perspective where I'm at in my life and what I should be doing. I want to push to be better. What excuse do I have?
Dude, I'll be honest.
It takes away the excuses.
Yeah, you're right. And dude, I'll be honest. Like, some people might think like I'm making this up or just saying it to say it, but dude, I feel like it was a privilege for me to have to go through cancer, like, because it made me reassess what matters, what doesn't matter, what's important, what's not important. And really, I stopped looking at people like, like my religion there for a long time was my politics, which I think is the biggest perversion of anything, which that's a whole nother podcast we can go off on. But it made me see people as the way God sees them, as they were made in his image, and Jesus Christ died for them. That's it. A hard stop. That's all that matters, are those things. And how can I help people find him? Or how can I be a tool in his toolbox, So
that's a good way. It's a good way to frame it. I mean, James said that too. He was online. He was like, he said it's been a privilege. I mean, I understand this sucks, and I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but I've been given a clock. I've been given a clock, and everyone has a clock that we ignore, right? Like,
yeah.
But he said it put it into perspective for him. I've been given, at the time it was 2 years. And now what am I going to do for those 2 years? I'm not going to sit around and wither away, because I know my clock. I know my expiration date. So he's like, I'm going to be better, because I know I have a clock. which is gruesome to even think about.
Yeah.
But we as people, we all have a clock. We don't know when it ends. We don't know when the big man's going to pull our ticket. So we
Exactly
take
right.
advantage of it. And we take advantage of it, and we walk around treating people disrespectfully and being self-serving, and it's like, that's not what we were put on this earth to do. And I find more enjoyment when I'm helping people and seeing seeing James go through his journey, hearing your story. I'm like, and I'm always I've gone through my own stuff,
Yeah.
nothing like that, but I've gone through my own stuff that's really made me look at people differently. Like when people are being rude or disrespectful, or in my mind, I'm like, dude, what are they going through? Like that is pain, internal pain being put out on people.
Yeah.
I don't see it as like, this dude's a douchebag. I'll distance myself from certain people, but in the back of my head, I'm like, man, like, what are they going through, and how can I still be there for them, even if
Yeah.
I've been wronged, even if people have done me dirty? Like, I don't take it personal. I never burn a bridge. I always keep that door open. And people think of me like, why are you putting yourself through that? Like, why are you dealing with these people because I was that person who needed someone and was written off. I mean, I'm still going through that,
Yeah.
I'm going through something, and this light has been painted on me despite none of it being true. But I don't take it personal, because it's like, who am I to tell someone how to grieve? Who am I to tell someone how to deal with their pain?
Yeah.
I could just continue to be the person that I am and that I was set out to be, and hope that people see me for who I am and not what's being thrown out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to frame it, of like, it's a privilege, but like the stuff I've went through, it was a privilege, because if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be the man I am today.
Absolutely.
It's just, how are you, when you get a situation, how are you going to handle it? And I think it's important to really sit down with yourself and go, where is the lesson in what I'm going through? Where can I find something to learn and take from this that'll make me a better person, that'll make me a better father, husband, friend, coworker? If we start doing that with all the challenges we face in life, it will push you to be a better person. You have no choice.
Absolutely.
So going through all that, you keep mentioning Fighter's Passport. It's like a community you've built. Where does that play into your journey and your role? Like, how did that come about, and what is your goal with Fighter's Passport in what you're doing and going through?
Yeah. So, man, I wanted to train everywhere we went. Like, if we were going on vacation somewhere, I was already Googling, trying to find the schools, reaching out to them, and trying to find somewhere to go roll. And I remember I've been down to Orlando a few times and rolled at some really cool schools. People are amazing down there. And then there was a place on the coast I went to, couldn't find anything. And then I remember I was up in New York. My business partner Joshua, his business, they have meetings up there, and he asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, heck yeah. Like, I'm a nerd, so like, you drop me off at the Museum of Natural History, like, I'll stay there from door open till door shut. You got to pull me out of like all the different exhibits, but I'll stay there all day. And then like, I really wanted to go to the 911 or 9/11 museum, which that was awesome. Um, but while we were up there, I was like, man, there's a lot of good schools up here. I'd like to go roll. And I started looking. I Googled BJJ near me, or jiu-jitsu near me, or Brazilian jiu-jitsu near me. And obviously there was a lot that popped off. But I spent hours, and I'm not exaggerating, I spent hours trying to reach out and find a gym to where I could get to. And there was very little consistency on accuracy of schedules and classes and requirements on their websites. And then some gyms wanted you to reach out on Instagram, Facebook, call, email, but they didn't tell you that until like you found the right one. So I called Josh, my professor, and I said, hey man, I really want to trade somewhere. He said, where are you at? And I told him, and he said, look this gym up. And it was Marcelo Garcia School. And he said, reach out to them. And they had everything. Like, I was able to get there early, sign the waiver, pay the money for the drop in, and I rolled. And like, I rolled 3 classes. It was amazing. It was awesome. The black belt was Scott Kaplan. It was phenomenal. The classes he taught, it was no-gi. And while I was out there on that mat, man, each class I would roll with somebody different. And there was this kid, I think it was Aiden or Adrian from New Mexico. He was up there with his dad. Super good, duper good kid. Absolute flipping killer, man. Like, wore me out. And then he goes, "Are you good, sir?" Just as kind as he could be. And like, 16, I think he was like 18, but he was just an absolute savage, super duper nice guy. And then there was a gentleman from Marcelo's school in Detroit. Um, and he was a black belt, super nice guy, my age, destroyed me. And then, there was just so many cool people there. And at that same time, it was when Khalil Roundtree was up there training. I didn't get to see him, but I tried. But it was just an amazing community, and these people were like all talking, and like they all thought I was from Kansas because of Ted Lasso. So I'm just going to go ahead and break a lot of hearts. I've not met anybody from Kansas that sounds remotely like me. Sorry. That's Jason Sudeikis is an amazing actor, and he stole the Southern Appalachian accent when he did Ted Lasso. That's not a Kansas accent. I'm just going to go and clear the air. But
a lot of heartbreaks.
I know. Everybody's so upset, but they got better whitetail. I'll say that. But it was just so cool. And then I went down to Orlando a few more times, and I went and I met all these people, and like, then I went to Myrtle Beach and trained at oh my goodness, Next Element, New Element. And there's a guy from there that reaches out to me while the hurricane's going on to make sure me and my family are okay. And I still talk on Instagram to a couple dudes that I've trained at other gyms with. And I was like, while we were in New York, when I got back that night, I sat there, and Joshua was still in a business meeting, and I was just sitting there, and I was putting pen to paper, and I was like, man, there's got to be something out there. So I looked, and the only thing I found was databases, but they didn't have up-to-date information. They didn't have much. And I was like, there's got to be something. So like, I literally wrote it out on a piece of paper, and I just stored it away. I'm still involved with another company that's in the outdoor industry as a silent partner. And we were meeting with a guy. So in the state of North Carolina, they're very good about small business technology development centers, and they work with local universities, and their focus is to help small businesses. So we had a meeting with our guy in our area, and I go to church with this gentleman. He's awesome. And we were talking, and after the meeting, Bob just said, Tyler, you got anything else that you really want to work on, like any other business ideas? And so I sat there and wrote out on a napkin in front of Bob what I had. And he says, I think you got something. So we did multiple feasibility studies, multiple business plans. And then he said, I think the next stage is you got to start talking to software companies. And so I reached out. I interviewed 7 software companies and ended up with a software company out of Pittsburgh, TrueFit. And I got to go do a customer discovery. Yeah. Well, I spent some time. So I went up to Pittsburgh, and I went and rolled at Iron City. I can't remember which location, or Steel City. Is it Steel City? Steel City. And then I met Claire, and then I found her like social media. I'm not going to go on the mat against Claire Butterfield.
Dude, I had her on here too.
I listened to her. She's awesome, dude. And then I met Jarek. Do you know Jarek? Do you know Jarek?
Yeah. He does Veteran Bushido.
Yeah, dude. So met Jarek through that. So we had like a customer discovery where we sat down there, we talked about some things. And then I was very, very blessed and very fortunate for the gentleman that's my business partner, one of my best friends, Joshua. He's helping with a lot of the development, because software development is not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. And then he's partnered with me on Fighter's Passport. And so I went home, and I literally bet the house. I took a HELOC out on my house and started funding what I could for Fighter's Passport. And the goal of Fighter's Passport is for gyms to have somewhere where they can list their information in a clear and concise way that's super duper user friendly. You don't have to be a tech guy to do it. It's very easy to update, but also it's easy for them to put all their information about their classes, their schedule, and then they can have people RSVP that are coming to drop in. And then they can also sign a digital waiver. The gym uploads their waiver, and then the person will sign it, and it's saved. And that person can pay the drop-in fee all on the app before they get to the gym. That way they can spend more time rolling and less time scrolling, or more mat time, less screen time. And it helps the gyms because, man, gyms get hit up for everything. And when we talked to a lot of gym owners, one thing we kept getting back was they kept saying that it was a reoccurring thing. Is like, I created this business to teach people jujitsu, not to become a WordPress expert, not to have to go and do all these different things on social media, not to have to, you know. And I was like, yeah, you're right. We should make something really easy. So that's what we did for the gyms. But for a lot of the people, it was like, man, it's frustrating when you go to an area not being able to find any of the information out about the gyms. And then also, like, when you go and you start reading reviews, you got a bunch of nut jobs out there, man. And sometimes people don't even go to the gym, have never trained at that gym. We had a lady leave a review because a guy had a shirt on of our gym, not our gym, but just a Gracie Boss shirt on. And he was in a restaurant with no shoes on. And she reviewed that, gave us a 1-star review on our Google review. Has nothing to do with our gym.
Some people just, they need an outlet to complain, and we've made it very easy. You can just
absolutely.
But then you won't say it in person, you know? Like, if that was bothered you so much, why didn't you go up to the dude and be like, can you put shoes on?
Yeah.
It bothered you that much.
Yeah. But no, you had to come and try and ruin somebody's livelihood because you didn't agree with the person being barefoot. And it was just, it's weird stuff like that. So what I've done is now gyms can have ratings, and then eventually we're going to work on a review portion to where the review will be written by the people that have actually attended it. We're not going to import something from Google or Yelp. It's going to be people that have attended the gym can actually leave a review. We've got
like a check-in process. Like,
oh yeah. So right now for the individual, we've got a lot of tools set up. To where you can create your own little profile. You can go on fighterspassport.com, click on student sign up, or go to app.fighterspassport. And it's a Google or Facebook login right now. We're expanding it to other emails, but that's where we're at right now. And you can go in there, you can put your information of who you are, where you're from, your rank. You can set things to private. Right now, individuals can't look at your profile. That might be a future iteration. Right now, the only people that can see any information about you is the gym you're attending. So you can go in there and put in all your information, and then you can go and find gyms and favorite them and all that stuff. But then you can use that database to look when you're traveling somewhere, or before you're traveling, or while you're somewhere. You can use our database to go and find gyms around you. And if the gym has come in and signed up and put their information in, you'll find all their information. If not, you'll be able to use what contact information we have available to us from everyone to where you can reach out to that gym. And then you can also set up a training thing to where a new feature we came out with on our training is right now. Originally, you could set like training goals for like so many workouts, so many jiu-jitsu workouts in so many days. And that was more of accountability. And so what we've added is a journaling feature that where you can rate your physical, your mental, and overall feeling of that class, and add in notes like what you learned that day, what the focus was, reflecting on a role, things like that, to where you can have that information there for your own. Like, some people, that's very important to them, is the ability to go in and like refresh that and like write things, like to have a check-in. And also it's a good thing too for some folks that struggle with like what we were talking about earlier, like getting up and going, is you hit that thing and you go look and you're like, man, look at all these days on what that did for my mental well-being, or how I felt physically after that. I'm just going to suck it up and go. You know what I mean? Our goal is just to help people have the motivation and some accountability to go. For the individual, for the gym, I'm wanting to do it for them. The goal is to keep it free for them as long as humanly possible. If some of the gyms, we've had some gyms talk to us about like, well, we just don't really want to put the stuff in. We'd rather pay you guys to do that or to maintain it. And like, we're coming up with stuff where we'll help them do that. But right now, it's all 100% free for the gym. They just got to reach out to me and I can get them set up. There's also a video to where it's really easy for how they go in and set all their information up. They can put in their classes, and in their classes, it'll break down like a description of the class, who the teacher is. However in-depth you want to be, you can do that. We've tried to make it really, really user-friendly to where that's why it's a web-based application as well. I didn't want to hamstring people to where they could only do it mobile. Could you imagine having to fill out all the information of a gym on a mobile or like an iPad? No. Yeah. You'd hate everything about me.
A lot of zooming and
Oh, you'd hate everything about me. So a
So
web-based
it's just,
application is why we did it.
so it's essentially like a central hub for jiu-jitsu gyms and all that. Are you gonna have like
Yeah.
a milestone feature? I think that'd be cool. Like I've gone to a couple like gyms, like training gyms, where each time you check in, it's documented, and after like 10 check-ins, you reach a milestone. After 20 check-ins, and like people like that reward system of like,
Absolutely.
man, this month I went 13 to the gym 13 times. Last month
Yep.
I only went 7. So kind of a way to kind of track your
Yes,
progress
sir.
in attendance, because everyone knows like I've had a conversation about just showing up, right? Like just showing up is the first step. But there comes a point where if you want to get good, some just showing up doesn't matter. Like you need to show up and
Yep.
be intentional with showing up.
Yep.
So having like those little milestone features to track people's progress, I think it's cool.
Yeah, we've got that, and you can go in there and look at your history of all the workouts you've done, everywhere you've trained. A lot of that stuff for the individuals, like, you know, it's really something. And we got some stuff in the pipe that we're working on that I think is really going to help folks. It's going to help gyms, and it's going to help the community in a real positive way and make life a lot easier for a lot of folks.
I think that'll be huge for people who cross train too, right? Like I got a couple of buddies who one of their goals is to visit every MLB stadium.
Yeah.
Right? Like they have a favorite baseball team, but one of their goals is to visit every MLB stadium. I think it'd be cool to have like a feature of like, oh, you visited 13 different gyms in 6 different states last
Yeah.
year. You know, like people who like to travel a lot, being able to be like, oh, I went to this GB gym, I went to this Henzo gym, I went to this top team gym, kind of like again that accolade feature of like, you know, because cross training is important, right? You train at your gym, that's awesome. And like my gym, Stout, here in Pittsburgh, we have a huge member base. We also have 4 different gyms, so you can even get different looks by going to different Stout gyms.
Yep.
But it's cool when Mat Factory comes, or we go to Mat Factory, or we go to, you know, different gyms in the area, and you get a different look with people. Now imagine that on like a national level or a worldwide level. You know, I was in Europe and I trained at this gym in Europe. Like that's a cool thing to be able to say and be able to track.
Dude. So yeah, no, that's absolutely there. We have that we're working on those things as well, to where folks will be able to have the accolades. We're going to start the process of looking at international. My goal was never for this just to be in the U.S. Like if you look in Europe right now, man, BJJ is exploding.
Dude, worldwide, it's getting crazy. You ever heard of you use Spotify, right?
Yeah.
You know the Spotify wrap up at the end of the year?
Oh yeah.
Dude, doing something like that would be cool. Like, hey, this year you visited 13 gyms in 7 different states and 2 different countries. Like that's almost a flex. That's a flex. And
Absolutely, it is.
People like that wrap up, me included, because it's like, oh, how many new artists you discovered? 1,300 new artists this year. It's like, wow, damn, I didn't realize I was listening to that wide array of music. You're listening to 12 different genres. Like it's like, oh, that's you don't realize that throughout the year, and then that wrap up kind of like puts it all together for you, and you're like, I did that.
Yeah,
being able to do that with grappling.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We're going. We're looking at going to the lowest hanging fruit is English speaking countries first, because in all my ignorance, like I thought, oh, you just got to change the language on the how the app looks, and I was wrong. There's a lot that goes into it. So that's another point of why I kept it in a web-based application is you can use like a lot of the instructors here, you know, their primary language is Portuguese. So you can go to Google Translate and it'll translate our entire app and the page for those people to where they can put all their stuff up. But when you're going to other countries, for it to work in that country, it has different things it has to do on the back end. So we're looking at expanding into Canada and then the UK and then to Australia. And then after that, we're going to start the Portuguese route. And then we've got a list of how we're going to expand it to where exactly you're dead on the money, man. To where if you're traveling somewhere, you should be able to use our app to find somewhere. The only place probably not going to go is anywhere it's communist. So that's my rule, man. You want fighter's passport, give the people freedom.
Pretty fair. Not too much to ask for, right? Let people be free. Like,
it's a crazy concept. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
no, that's awesome, and it's a way to bridge that community you're talking about, that jiu-jitsu community. How you talked about the jiu-jitsu community mirroring your faith community.
mhm.
How are those two similar, and how have they intertwined in your life?
I think the biggest similarity, there's a couple big similarities. Like it's people from all walks of life. I heard a guy at our gym said, you only meet people from this many different walks of life in prison, at church, or in a jujitsu gym, or the military. Um, he said those are the four areas. The other thing is, man, I think when you have a community that you suffer together with, when you go through adversity, you have those people with you. Like at jujitsu, you're suffering on the mat with somebody, and that gives you a whole different outlook and a whole different, like, any of the guys and gals that I train with, they know that they can call me and I can call them, and that's widespread across our gym. Is these are your people. It's the same thing at our church. It's when you suffer through life with people, you become closer, and it gives you the ability, like for us, to be the hands and feet of Jesus to all sorts of people. And what I like about jujitsu is it's not just in theory about it, it's not just reading about it, it's living it. It's You're out there on that mat, man, and life is hard, and you're forced to focus on the task at hand, right? And you get to put in the practices of suffering well is one of the biggest things for me. That is that where they mirror. But it's interesting, the heart of the people that are like, that are truly pursuing it, like folks that are truly like doing what, the Lord's laid out for us. You can tell the change that comes in their heart and who they are. And when you see people truly applying and learning jujitsu to try to like look at all the things outside of physical dominance or the ability to choke somebody else, everything else that comes in, you see a change in those people as well, as where the posture of the heart changes. I think in both. Obviously, in my faith community, I think it changes the posture of the heart more, but you can see a good posture change in jujitsu.
No, I agree. I think jujitsu, people who intentionally, who have good intention with jujitsu, you will see it because you'll go into a gym, and like in both worlds, I tell people this, like especially in church.
Mm-hmm.
A church is not for the perfect person. A church is for the broken. That's why we go to church. We go to jujitsu to learn jujitsu. Like if I knew everything about jujitsu, there was no point in me going to train, right?
Yep.
Like I'm going to become an instructor and never roll again because I know it all. But that's why we go to jujitsu. That's why we go to church, to learn, to better ourselves. And in those communities, you have people who aren't at a certain level in their journey,
Yep.
right? So in jiu-jitsu, you'll get the guy who you get there and he just wants to smash you and then destroy you, and then he gets a sense of purpose because he inflicted pain and damage on you. Which, never miss a good opportunity to inflict violence and pain in
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu. Cool, I get it. I
Yeah.
love it. I love violence. But more than not, you get people, you go in, you get a black belt, and it gives you this sense of like, man, he's gonna kill me. And then you're rolling with him and you're getting stuff on him or her, and but like what you don't realize is this person is rolling to your level to push you, to better you, to make you better. And I think that's very important. And I love that about the jiu-jitsu community, that most people will use that opportunity to teach you something, right? Like I'll be with a black belt and I'm like stuck, and he'll just whisper to me like, hey, like pull your hip out, angle here, and then you should pop my arm out. I'm like, oh, okay. Like in my mind, I'm like, why would you tell me that? And I do it, pop his arm out, get him in like a Kimura or an Americana, and then he gets out of it, of course. But
Yeah.
he allows you the opportunity to train that, to drill that, and then he gets it out, and then now you're not stuck anymore. You're forced to think, and you're back in that swing of things. Same with church. You go there and you're going through your journey, and your neighbor or your pastor or worship leader or team members like, hey, like I heard you're going through this thing. Like we should sit down and talk about it over coffee or something. Like they're not there to judge you. They're not there to like, I'm better than you, but it's a perfect environment to like facilitate growth, facilitate
Absolutely.
you to be a better person. So I think a lot of selfishness, humility, and acceptance with people who are doing it with the right intention, right? Because I've
Yeah.
been to churches where they're like, you drink? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
sin, hell. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like what are you going to do about that? Like
Yeah.
If it's so bad, like, what are you're just going to sit here and chastise me? Or you go to a jiu-jitsu gym and they're like, dude, you suck. And then they walk away and you're like, cool.
Cool.
What are we doing about, like, okay, like, isn't that why I'm here? To be better?
Yeah.
You know, and I think when you approach jiu-jitsu and faith in that way, you actually push off a lot of people who are looking in and maybe interested in jiu-jitsu or interested in growing their faith. But because you're on your high horse of sitting on your upper belt, or you're sitting on your holiness, you're pushing people away. And that's
Yeah.
not what jiu-jitsu is. That's not what being a Christ follower is. It's about
Exactly
bringing
right.
people in and introducing them to jiu-jitsu, introducing them to Jesus, and then letting the process play out.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm not here to force Jesus on you or force jiu-jitsu on you. I'm here to facilitate the introduction. And
Yeah.
if you approach it with an open heart, you're going to get good at both of those. But I can't make you get good. You have to want to get good.
That's
My
exactly
job,
right, buddy.
my job is simply to facilitate the introduction.
Yes, sir. 100%.
And I think bridging that gap with Fighter's Passport is a good way to get people into jiu-jitsu, right? Like, you're in a different state or a different, you're on vacation, and people are always happier on vacation, right? Like, I love when people go on vacation and they're like, I'm going to start working out. I'm going to go to the hotel gym today. Like, you're like, that's cool. Like, how cool would it be to be like, oh, I'm on vacation today. I've always wanted to go to jiu-jitsu. There's one right down the street from the hotel. Let me check in. Let me just go to a class.
Yeah.
That can be that introduction.
Dude, it's so we're going down for our boys. Like, we're very big about, like, we work on giving our boys experiences, not gifts, right? And so we're very fortunate that we're going to Orlando this weekend to take them. They don't know yet. We're going to take them down to Universal. They do this thing where they close the park and they do this meetup. So the boys will get to be, like, in the park after dark, getting to walk on the rides. But I'm going to train at a school down in Orlando. It'll be my first time at this one. But I've already messaged them and they're looking forward to it. And I'm just, like, jacked to go to that school. And we know that we're doing it on the Global Day of Grappling. And I'm going to roll for an hour straight. And the guy said, bring your gi and bring your gi and your no gi gear. We'll see what we feel like doing when you get here, and we might change halfway through. And I was like, well, I'm actually cool with doing an hour in the gi and an hour no gi, and then going and finding a cow and just eating the whole cow to replace the calories I just lost. But you know, it's just, you're right. When you travel somewhere and it's a new place, but you already know who you're going to meet there. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. And I think it's very important for people to, like, find communities that align with their values and passions.
Yeah.
You know, like, in whatever industry, whatever thing you want to do, because these connections can provide, like, inspiration and support to what you want to do and what you find value in. You know, jiu-jitsu and faith happens to be mine. So, like, surrounding myself with people in those communities with good intention is very important for me. But that applies to anything.
Yeah.
Anything. How has this jiu-jitsu community and your faith community kind of, like, pushed you and inspired you in your personal life to continue pushing forward given the adversity you've faced?
Man, they've just really they've just been there. Like, they're constantly in my corner. If that, they're constantly like, where can we help? How can we help? What can we do? And then, so at our church, like, we point back to, like, practicing, the spiritual disciplines and, practicing stuff like that. And it's just been, it's been awesome, because there are so many people that I get to talk to, and they tell me my story has affected them in some way, shape, or form. And that happens at church, and that happens at the gym. One of my good buddies, Tarzan, absolute savage. Me and him came up together. We call him Tarzan the Tree Man because that's what he does. He climbs trees and he's an arborist, but he's my size, and he has a background in powerlifting, and he's just tough. So, like, he broke his ankle at the gym, and he takes his boot, puts it on, and just ties it up extra tight and walks out the door to go, like, get it taken care of. Like, he's just that guy. But
For support.
we were there yeah. So we were there one morning rolling, and I had my cast on, and, like, Tarzan, he was rolling. He's very good, but he wasn't being a jerk, but he could tell after the roll, I was just kind of like frustrated. And he goes, Tyler, he was like, I want you to not get discouraged. He was like, because when people come to our gym and they see you walking out here with a cast on, still recovering from the effects of chemo, because like it takes a long time for chemo, especially what I had to get out of your body. He was like, when they see that, it kind of, they put it in their Rolodex of, well, this excuse isn't going to work. I got to get out there. And he said, so the reason I show up at this gym is because one day you're going to have been here more classes than I have. And I know I've got payback coming. He said, so I just want you to know, like, when I think of a day when I don't want to come train or something's, I got other things to go do. He was like, I think of you in that cast. And I just get up and I drive to the gym. Which some days I wish he wouldn't, because he keeps getting better and it's harder and harder to hold him down. And when I get him
don't
in the mount,
use me.
just
Don't use me. Take a day off. Rest.
Yeah. You know what?
The Bible says
you
rest.
earned a year, buddy. Yeah. You just get out of here, bro. Like, but no, it's been really cool and uplifting. Like when people are able to talk about that, and I just tell people all the time, man, if I do anything remotely correct or that's good, it's because of Jesus. It has nothing to do with me. And if I hit something in jiu-jitsu, it's 100% luck. I am not that good. The best thing I am, like, is I'll put my tap game up against anybody. I'm quick. Like, it's real fast. That's about
like
all
in training, I'm the same way. I'm the same in training. I'm tapping. Like, why put yourself through that? Like in a competition, break it. But like in training, nah, you got me. You got me. You win. Tell your friends. Like, make a Facebook post or Instagram post. Who uses Facebook anymore? But I'm the same way. I'm the same way. On the topic, real quick, gi or no gi? What's your preference? I know everyone has that preference.
Dude, I'm not trying to be that guy, but I can go both. Like, because I grew up wrestling, so like obviously no gi is like I was attracted to, but like I never realized why I enjoyed gi so much until John said it the other day, because you could slow it down with the grips. And because of my size, like, so I'm 160, so I get all the dudes and dudettes that are like out of high school wrestling, those are the people I have to go with. So I love having something to slow them down, but I do really enjoy no gi. Like, it's just because I feel comfortable.
Gi.
Yeah, I feel comfortable in no gi.
I started gi because of that exact reason, right? I'm strong. So if I grab your lapel and I pin it to the mat, you're there.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna breathe. I'm gonna rest. And people started picking up on that, and they're like, "Oh, you should train no gi. You should train no gi." Well, that forces me to be more technical now. Strength doesn't really come into play with that, because technique, So like, I can't grab something. I grab your rash guard. It's just going to slip through my hands. But with that big fat lapel, and I have a grip, I am using every excuse to rest, to get my composure back, and then to think through things, right? Like, where am I going to go from here? Oh, am I going to go for a lapel choke? I can, because I have this extra grip here, but the no-gi really forced me to, like, you have to be better. You can't rely on these crutches that has gotten you this far, because like on the street, if you're forced to defend yourself, a t-shirt neck is not going to be the same as a lapel, So
but if you got a hoodie on, it's ball game.
If you got a hoodie on, I'm suffocating you with it.
Yeah, you're dead. Yeah. It's
what yeah. We're gonna take a brief break, go to sleep, and then we'll reassess.
We're talking about decisions, and I'm going to tell you about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Well, as you wake up, I'm going to be flipping through. We'll talk Acts tonight. We're going to talk Acts tonight. Yeah.
I'm just going to look at you and say, you know who you almost met? Jesus, but you weren't ready. So that's why we're going to have this conversation.
Oh, dude, I love you're like the nice. And I have a profound respect for like nice, violent people. Like, you're very nice, and you can be violent. I respect you a lot, just because. And jiu-jitsu and faith teaches you that, right? Like, you never know who's on the other side.
That's exactly right.
What are some key lessons and things you've taken away throughout your journey that you want people listening to this to kind of like understand? Once this podcast is off, once they're home, once they're doing their daily lives, like, what are some key takeaways you want them to take home from listening to you?
I guess like the biggest thing is the reason that I had the peace and the humility um, throughout all that I've dealt with, and like some of the things I continue to deal with, is Jesus and jiu-jitsu. The biggest being Jesus by far. It helped me realize that I see people made as in the image of God, they're image bearers, and Jesus Christ died for them. So that changes how I treat them. Like, I don't have to agree with everything you have to say, um, but I do know that the way I interact with you is extending on, my faith and who I'm representing. So that's made me such a better human being. And then also the reason that I have that constant peace is because of Jesus. Um, there's things happening now. Me and my son were actually diagnosed with a rare vascular disorder. It's the vascular form of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so it's VEDS. Pretty rare, we found out. Luckily, we only have the null variant of it, so we don't have the difficulty that other people have, but our bodies produce roughly 50% less protein and collagen. And usually that would have terrified me. But I know God's got a plan with it, and I'm okay playing my part. And, it's in those moments of uncertainty, and then like, starting a business is a huge risk, and it's very risky. And like, if I start looking at the financial commitment side of it and thinking of, hey, revenue's not happening, like, I could start getting really freaked out. But I'm all right, man. Like, I serve a creator who makes sure that the sparrows have what they need, so he's going to take care of me, so that's what I would hope people would come to understand, is like, the most important thing in this world is that personal relationship with Jesus, and getting to that point. Um, and then what is a fantastic tool to have to where you can be nice and violent is jiu-jitsu. Maybe throw a little striking in there here and there, but what you'll find out is in jiu-jitsu, you get yourself to where you can take that elbow across somebody's dome piece really, really easy if you know what you're doing. So, it's a good thing to have. So yeah, that would be the two biggest lessons I've learned, is like, at the core of them, at core of both of them is Jesus.
And that I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. I think if you have that faith foundation, what comes next, it comes next. And I try to tell people, especially, and if you're not if you're not a faith follower, there's this principle of life, right? Like, good comes around. Like, if you what you or we hear this all the time, what you put out, you'll get back, right?
Yeah, you reap what you sow.
You reap what you sow. There's all these life lessons and proof of the concept. And I read this book, Don't Believe Everything You Think. Highly recommend that book. Kind of reframes like how we approach adversity in life. And what's going to happen is going to happen. You worrying about it really isn't going to change it. It's your approach to that issue that's going to change the outcome, right? So are you going to sit here and be like, man, I have nothing, I can't do anything about it, kind of wither away? Or are you going to start putting your energy into, how can I combat this issue? Right? Like, how it's going to play out is going to play out. And that's the way I look at it. Like, when I'm facing adversity, I'm just like, where's the lesson in this?
Yeah.
And that has pushed me to get through things better, and then approach the next issue better, because I went through this. And I tell people, like, if you're alive and you're breathing, you have another opportunity, you have another chance. You are 100% success rate in facing adversity because you're here today, right? 100%. You have won every battle. So the one you're going through, you're going to come out on the other side. Just make it to tomorrow. Make it to tomorrow. And if you keep that in mind, it's going to make you look at life differently, look at people differently, because everyone is on their journey. Everyone is going through things. And if we can help each other out, build this community where we have the best of intentions for people, it's going to come back. Not all the time, but it will. And when it does, it'll get you through. And that's the whole premise of real people, real stories, real freaking life, right? I love that, because these stories are of real people going through real things. And I love the opportunity to hear people's stories, because I can pull from, like I said, listening to you, I don't get to be like, man, I don't want to roll today, I'm tired. So what? So what? If that's something you have to do, if that's a goal of yours, you find a way. You just find a way. If it's not a priority to you, that's fine. But you don't get to be like, oh man, why am I not getting better at this, that, or whatever? Is it a priority? If it is, you're going to have to find a way.
Yeah.
There's just no other way around it. Bro, where can people find, if they've listened to your story, they've heard of Fighter's Passport, and they want to know more? Where can people learn more about you, learn more about Fighter's Passport, and kind of get involved in what you're doing?
Yeah. So for me, like I'm on the gram. It's a private profile, but you're more than welcome to shoot me a request. It's at Tricky Tross. Yep, you heard that right. There's a story behind that too, but we'll get to that another time. But for Fighter's Passport, we're on Instagram, Facebook. If you are a business person, I'm on LinkedIn with it as well. It's just at Fighter's Passport. And if you have questions about the app or getting signed up or any of that, Tyler at fighterspassport.com. You can reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook. I'm fairly quick to get back to you. So yeah, that's essentially the easiest ways to find me, fighterspassport.com, and all the information's there. So yeah, holler at me.
I'll make sure to put all your stuff on the back because this is a cool concept. It's a cool idea. And when I believe in something, I just put all my eggs in that basket because I love seeing other people's success. It kind of fuels me to want to do better and be better. So Fighter's Passport, make sure you check it out, especially if you're in the jiu-jitsu or grappling community.
Yeah. And
Definitely a cool concept.
we're looking that it'll include Muay Thai and Judo. Because what I found is of the martial arts, like it's jiu-jitsu, judo, Muay Thai, grappling, and like MMA. Those are the only real areas there's cross training. Everybody else I've talked to, they don't really cross train much. Like,
no, it's true. Our gym offers it all. Our gym offers it all. We have a striking, Muay Thai on one side, we have jiu-jitsu on the other side, we have fitness in the back. And then what you'll find is the jiu-jitsu people will go to Muay Thai, and the Muay Thai people will go to jiu-jitsu. Especially if you're one of the fighters coming out of the gym, like you're bouncing between each school essentially, to kind of like sharpen all your edges there. Well, I appreciate you for jumping on, Tyler. Hell of a story.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity, man, and having a platform. I really love your podcast. You got some good stuff on there for sure.
Dude, I appreciate that. And doing this stuff, I always find myself like, man, how can I be better? What could I do to be better? And that's why I tell people, like, message me. And people do. I didn't really like this format or this. I take it all in. I don't take anything personal because at the end of the day, I want this to be the best for people. So what better people to listen to than the people listening? Right. So I always encourage people to offer feedback, good, bad, or in between. I do appreciate you for jumping on, sharing your story. I know that stuff's not easy. It requires a level of vulnerability, and I appreciate everyone who comes on and willing to share their story on a platform that could be seen by hundreds of thousands of people. Because once it's on the internet, it's on the internet. So to come on and do that, I do appreciate that. This is the one with Tyler Ross with Fighter's Passport, and we are out. Later.